So the idea of allowing myself to drop my walls, to allow another human being to come in, to lay down what I thought was accurate and what was supposed to be, and to allow myself to be willing to receive something new was a very difficult process because I trusted no one.
Welcome to another episode of the Win with Love podcast, where our mission is to bring you stories that impact the world. Today, I get to share the set with my friend and colleague, Pablo Gonzalez. Pablo is a licensed mental health therapist. He is also EMDR trained, which makes him a trauma therapist. And he has been in the field for over 10 years. I am so happy to bring him on board because he has such a special message to share with you guys from a personal level as well as a professional level. And I want to get started with welcoming you, Pablo. Thank you so much for coming on and being able to take this on with me.
Well, Maggie, first of all, I just want to say thank you to you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence, be in your company. I think you're a very powerful person, very passionate about what you do. So anytime I can link up with someone like that, it just really brightens my day. So I appreciate the invite.
Oh, thank you. So I want to get started a little bit with telling the audience a little bit about who Pablo is, your story, and what led you into the field of counseling.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. When it comes to who am I would say I'm a person who loves God, a person who loves his wife, and a person who will do anything for his children. The other thing that I would consider when thinking about who am I would say that I am someone who is just beyond blessed to have been given another opportunity at this thing called life. Many years ago, my life wasn't where it is at today. I encountered many struggles throughout the years. And, if you would, it was like a moment where just life slowed down just enough during those hard times for me to actually see the writing on that sign that said, exit here for your second opportunity at life.
Yeah.
I grew up with, a lot of people in my life, big family. Both sets of grandparents had 10 kids each, which resulted in 58 first cousins that I know.
Oh my gosh.
And there might be some that are unaccounted for, but, just looking through the pages of my life, very fortunate, very blessed, very happy to have had all these opportunities with my cousins and family, my brother, my mom, my dad. Just very fortunate to have that, my traditional Mexican American.
Yeah.
So our values are traditional Mexican values.
Yeah.
And that, I think, shaped a lot of who I am today. So, there were all these great things, these great experiences. Unfortunately, the pages of my life also have very dark pages. I grew up in a very small town, and that's about one of the greatest things there is about that city. It's farming, it's an industry where they do a lot of sugar cane, vegetables, so a lot of people who work in the farms. Unfortunately, what's not so great about the environment is that it's very low SES. And what comes with that environment, in my case, is a lot of substance dependence, a lot of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And within the four walls of my home, my father actually struggled with alcoholism and substance use. So, right when I turned about 12 years old is when I decided to take my first drink. And around that time, because financially, my parents weren't in a position to give me everything I wanted as a kid, I decided to develop relationships with some men who, took advantage of, the situation, and taught me how to live a life that wasn't very kosher.
Yeah.
I wanted to prove to them that I was good enough, and I wanted to show that, I can, be a part of their community. And what I didn't know was the heartache that would come with that.
Right.
They dangle this carrot saying, oh, you'll have power, you'll be able to have different girls, you'll you know, be able to be financially set. But they had a very thick veil that also covered, I didn't see at the time, what that lifestyle was going to bring.
Right.
So on top of having a father who struggled with alcoholism and substance use, a mother who was the definition of codependent, a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting in the home, on top of all that, being exposed to some of this, to this other environment, brought a fair amount of additional traumatic events.
Yeah. Now I think it's real quick to highlight the fact that you are Hispanic. You know, I would say you're what, Mexican American,
Yes.
you would say? And so in the Hispanic culture, it's very male dominated, male driven. You know, the male figure has a lot of weight on it. So I just definitely want to highlight the fact that being even a younger boy, you know, or teenager, it was very luring to think about what they were offering you. And I think a lot of us, you know, and men especially, struggle with this. Even today, it doesn't matter if the generations have, you know, evolved or whatnot. I think in Hispanic cultures, we still, I'm, you know, Cuban American, still men struggle with, you know, I have to keep it all together. You know, if I can have the power, the money, the women, or whatever, like that's still something that gets highlighted and somewhat, I don't know, sought after. And when we get into a lifestyle, like you were saying, whether, you know, I'm, you know, assuming substance abuse, you know, drugs or whatnot, or just a bad lifestyle that doesn't lead you into the good ways, then that can really mix up the manly role, right, for someone. So,
You know, when you talk about the manly role, I think that was one of the greatest things that I was lacking. You know, I had an absent father who was constantly working, or if he wasn't working, he was drunk, or if he wasn't drunk, he was high. You know, having to, you know, figure out what is a man? What does it really look like? You know, is it just provision? Is it something else? Like, I had no clue. And then the individuals that I choose to follow were people who were not living a very good lifestyle. You know, so there was like this sense of like bewilderment as to what is correct, what is incorrect, you know, what is considered soft, you know, what is considered, you know, the status quo of what a man should be. So, you know, there I am, teenager, you know, trying to live up to some standard established by some very toxic, unhealthy men.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I want you, I mean, it would be great to know a little bit about, I know you said there was a life-changing moment in your life. I think it happened around in your teens. Would you want to talk a little bit about that? I think our audience would, you know, there's many people struggling with what you struggled with, and it would be a great example of, you know, what you went through and also overcoming it.
Yeah, so when you have this weight on your shoulders, you know, try to be good enough for these people. You know, try to be a decent son to your mother who struggles, and you don't want to add any more to her plate. To distance yourself and allow yourself to disregard any opinion or directive provided by your father, because there's some issues there and it's just complete rebellion. Yeah. Trying to balance all of that at the age of 13, 14 is a very daunting task. Something that no teenager should deal with. So failure of having mentors, failure to have some guidance and direction, failure to have, you know, a leader that would guide me and direct me, left me in a place of just utter confusion. And, you know, I got to a point where it was like, okay, if I have two choices, sink or swim, and that's what life provides. I've been swimming for a long time. Right. At this point, I had gotten tired of swimming. I was actually contemplating the idea of sinking. Yeah. Just giving up. Suicidal ideation. I established a plan because it was just too much for me to handle. I just couldn't make sense of all of these things that were on my plate. Yeah. And that just seemed to be the easiest alternative. I remember when I was about to go and follow through my plan, I would say, you know, I had, you know, a connection there with the God of my understanding. Yeah. And, you know, it reminded me of like my uncle who serves as a pastor. They have, you know, different family members of mine are involved in ministry in the church. at that moment, that would be, let's say, that exit sign that said, hey, veer to the right. This is a second opportunity at life. So when I open my mind and I open my heart to accept something different, something new, something opposite of what was going on in my life, it really, really, really provided, the greatest insight to live.
Right.
I started at that point to live, no longer living for, to please someone, no longer living to try to make, my world make some kind of sense, no longer living to, live up to some expectation from these people and, living a very rough life.
Mm-hmm.
The value set had changed.
Yeah.
So I started getting involved, let's say, in the church, in the local church. Had the opportunity to do pastoral counseling. Had the opportunity to fast forward, have a real mentor, a strong male leader in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Had an opportunity to somehow graduate high school.
Yeah.
And I remember the conversation I had with the school counselor, the first and last conversation with the school counselor, guidance counselor at the high school. I walked in and I said, hey, I've been thinking about college. School's counselor's response was, Gonzalez, why don't you focus on graduating high school? There's the door. So somehow, miraculously, I graduate high school. I get accepted into a community college.
Mm-hmm.
I get accepted into university. At the university, I find someone that I can actually connect with at the therapeutic level. So during this process of change, during this process of personal development, really identifying who I was. And at the time, I was in college still wearing gold teeth, still wearing the big clothes that, symbolize what I came from.
Right.
Because that was my culture at the time. That was what I lived for. Very confused. So when I found the counselor there at the university level, I was able to actually uncover some of the layers of what I thought was, and I began to identify with who I am.
So now that counselor was someone you sought therapy from at the school? Okay.
Right.
So let me just highlight real quick, how was that for you, a man, Hispanic male, and then seeking counseling? Because there's also a big stigma around, men and mental health, and, oh no, men just have to keep it together. We aren't necessarily going to seek counseling. That's for people who are crazy or, whatever is said.
I think in my case, the person's approach was very loving, and it was a female counselor. And that, I think, worked for me because I had such animosity and anger towards, my father. And, she was very loving, very caring, very soft-spoken. And, and it was the strangest thing to go there and to allow someone to tell me that it's okay to be loved, that it's okay to trust people. Well, I haven't trusted my parents since day one.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't trust the people who were teaching me the wrong road. I did not trust them. I followed them and I did, want to impress them, but I didn't trust them. I trusted no one.
Yeah.
And now this person is telling me, you can trust. People aren't out to get you. So then now there's this idea of, okay, my own personal, cultural values that you were referring to a second ago. Why am I even here? I don't need help. I can just take care of it. I could just stay busy. I could stay involved doing something else, studying or a program. So the idea of allowing myself to drop my walls, to allow another human being to come in, to lay down what I thought was accurate and what was supposed to be, and to allow myself to be willing to receive something new was a very difficult process because I trusted no one.
How long did it take you from the start of that process and trusting someone to understanding that, yes, not everyone's out to get you. There are people who want to help you. The world isn't necessarily the way you saw it always. So how long did it take you from the initiation to really fully adopt that sort of doctrine?
To be honest with you, a couple of years.
Wow.
Like I was able to trust her, the counselor at the university I attended. But when it came to outsiders, it was hard. You know, the idea that, put it to you this way, even the idea of going to, let's say, a Barnes and Noble, you know, I would look for the table or the chair that was close to a wall. That way no one would be behind me. I'd walk in and I'd casually seem to be walking in, but as I'm walking in, I'm watching everything. I'm looking for the exits. I'm looking for, you know, all those things that are just like routine.
Yeah, for you it was natural to be aware of your surroundings at all times. You needed to know in case of an issue what to do.
So to get to a place where I can allow myself to just walk in to an environment, a setting, and know that it's going to be okay, it took a while.
Wow. And how did you, so this is what I'm gathering too, and I know we know each other a little bit, so I have a little bit of insight to that, but you went from the child who had been exposed to this chaotic, you know, per se traumatic environment to the, you know, adult that is now opening himself up to, okay, maybe I can trust this lady, you know, maybe the world's not so bad. How did we go from that to now I want to serve others and help others?
There's an old saying, proof is in the pudding, right? If it, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? I was walking around thinking I was fixed, but was actually broken. Seeing that there's areas that could actually be mended, adjusted, put back into place. Seeing that opened my eyes to the reality and the true power behind kindness. Compassion, care, something that I didn't think was real because
it didn't exist in the world it came from.
To know that it's true, there's another way. Once that epiphany happened, or once that reality, once my new truth became part of who I was, it just opened my eyes to, you know, the idea of if I can change, others can too.
Right.
If I came, you know, with all this stuff, all these, you know, lows and you know, suicidal ideation, like all these things, if I'm able to change my life, so can others. So when I look at my life, it goes back to the initial statement that I made, I think, a little earlier. It's just a grateful soul, a grateful spirit, because had I not taken that right, I would not be here today.
Right.
So I think that real life experience and the ability to overcome is what motivates me and drives me to want to help others.
Right. And I think it's so important to mention that because you had the experiences you did, and because you had the extreme low to, you know, have the suicidal thoughts and plan and everything, and then understand and be aware that you could choose to do different, and then choose a different path. You know, we know the world has had a whole high number of you know, suicides these days, and it's such a huge topic. But to really give the message that there is an alternative, that we do not have to end our life to change the situation. Because that's really what we're doing. We don't always want to die, but we want the situation we're in to end. And so we think that unless we cut the cord, that it's not going to end. And I know it may not apply to, you know, I know there's super, super hard situations with third world countries. I mean, I understand there are situations that are almost impossible to get out of. But I think that we've also seen leaders that have been in jail, that have been in many different places, and the mindset That choice to say, well, reform is somewhere else. We can adjust. Change is possible. I don't know how, but it is possible. And entertaining that thought has then changed their lives. And so to bring you on here today, and even, just a little bit that we know from someone who could have been doomed to fail technically in the environment he was in, but was able to then shift a mindset, choose a mentor, and kind of move on from there and overcome and say, okay, well, maybe I can trust this counselor. I don't know, maybe I should continue. And then doing so, and then going through the personal development process, which, is huge. Knowing yourself, putting yourself in a place where you're going to strip yourself bare, understand what's happening, and then we can make a change is a huge marker. And then today it's like, now I'm not presenting Pablo that kid, right? I'm presenting Pablo who is licensed, who is a trauma therapist, who has a family, who has a whole different outlook on life, right? And now he's giving back. So I think it's amazing. I just definitely wanted to highlight that because it's a huge message that you're giving the world just by the things that you overcame.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So if you think about it, right? So a guidance counselor says to you, just focus on graduating, asks you to leave.
Yeah.
You have a father who says, hey, you're going to graduate like in a few months. When are you going to submit the application for the sugar mill? Like hounding. Hey, when are you going to put your application? Hey, look, your brother got hired there. When are you going to submit it?
Yeah.
To stand one's ground, not knowing what the next step is going to be, because I don't have any support with the guidance counselor
right.
office, and I have no support from my father. I asked him, hey, well, he asked me, so how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to figure that out? I said, well, you guys are going to help me, right? His response was, with what? Never had another conversation about, getting assistance for going to university or college, community college. Going from there to being connected, and this is why I go back to the reason why I'm mentioning this. It goes back to being connected with the right people who have your best interests in mind. Those individuals were the ones that kept me afloat. Those individuals were the ones that said, no, just apply to community college, right? You may not, just do the testing and see if you get in, hopefully you do. Okay, and then now I'm there, and it's like, okay, well, now it's time to, apply for the university. Oh, okay, and now you're there. And while at the university, one of the professors says, why don't you just do the dual track? That way you'll have a master's in mental health and a master's in rehabilitation. Things I would have never thought about doing.
Right.
But because I was connected and these people chose to love on me and say, we're not going to let this one drown. That is the reason why, there's this passion, there's a desire to do the services provided every single day. Because if you and I can be that point of contact for someone who may be feeling like they want to drown, but they connect with, let's say, you and I, and we can be that point of contact that provides that hope that just keeps
that little
flowing.
jump.
What a blessing. That's a miracle.
And I'll add a little bit to that. Yes, you had, this environment that now was helping you and you had certain connections or whatnot, but it all happened because at one point you chose yourself.
Right.
You chose yourself, and this is really related to the message as well as the podcast, because doing everything from a place of love also talks about loving yourself.
Yeah.
Because you chose yourself, and to love on yourself in the sense of, I'm not going to take my life, I'm going to give myself a chance. I don't know how, but I'm not just going to, do that, and I'm going to love myself in the way of getting out and getting graduating high school, going to college, and then spreading that after that. It's at the root of it all is the love that you have for this profession, but the love you have for humanity.
Right.
To want to help them, that I think makes, kind of brings it full circle. So real quick, I want to just shift gears, because I know that one of the biggest and most interesting populations for me is that you work with men, specifically Hispanic men, and bringing, thinking of the stigma that it brings from the culture. How do you navigate that in therapy. Maybe you have an example of what that session is like, or if you want to give us maybe a little bit of an overview of when you are, counseling a man, or what that looks like, because I'm sure there's like walls to break down.
So there are different things, really. It really depends on the person, right? Several walls. If you look at, let's say, an acculturated individual, raised in the United States, dealing with unacculturated parents.
Yeah.
There could be a big disconnect there. So let's say this acculturated individual gets married, starts to raise a family. What norms do they bring to the home?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an agreement, between what the grandparents are saying and what the parents are saying? That's just one simple little example as to certain stresses that come about it. Another example would be, individuals who really cannot identify, just within themselves,
mm-hmm.
who they want to be, because they're so enmeshed in the family relationship that they just want to please everyone, that they're kind of losing themselves in the process. So there's so many different things that individuals struggle with. So it's very unique to the individual and the person, because you just look at interpersonal struggles, you look at family dynamics, you look at relationships that they have, let's say, with their partner. There's so many factors to consider.
Yeah, and it's huge. So take me a little bit into an example, just because I think some of our listeners maybe have been to therapy before, and some of them maybe are listening to this episode for the first time and saying, well, I'm a guy and maybe I should go to counseling, but I'm not sure. So first session, you're with a male client, maybe specifically Hispanic or not, but they have this thought about, should I even be in therapy? What am I doing here? Is this for someone who's crazy?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? And how can you help? And how do you help, or people feel they've been helped by you?
Well, part of the goal is to provide a safe place through professional care.
Yeah.
So what that means is, for any male or female to come into the office and to actually find themselves in a position where they can actually ease their mind,
mm-hmm.
right? This is a safe place. This person is providing professional care. What is the goal? Well, for many men, right?
Yeah.
We're focused on the men with this question.
Of course.
Struggle with, do I need this? Is this even necessary? Am I allowing myself to be vulnerable? I don't know if I'm ready for that.
That's huge. Vulnerability is huge.
So you have all those things to consider that could really interfere with the therapeutic process. So I guess the main goal is to just let the person know that this is a safe place. Whatever's said in here stays in here.
Right.
This is a no judgment zone.
Right.
This is a place for you to allow yourself to freely express what's been bothering you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because once you start to break down some of the walls and some of the barriers,
yeah,
and you start to get to know the person, I usually find that they've been ready to express. They've been ready to want to be open. They just didn't know they could in some cases.
Right.
Then you have, let's say, the Hispanic culture. Sometimes there's this sense of machismo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there's some pride, there's a lot of walls, there's a lot of barriers just with that. So that, I think, piggybacks, with the whole question of whether I should be vulnerable or not. I mean, they kind of mirror each other.
Right.
It's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Mm-hmm. And is there an adjustment maybe in cultural mindset or values that these folks may have to do, or maybe just kind of create a little bit of a change in themselves from the machista, or men embody this role as they were taught, but now these men are embracing, let's say, vulnerability, being open? Like, how do you navigate, I guess, that change?
To help them get to a place to understand that it's okay to challenge the norm. It's okay to challenge the norm. Yes, your mother and father did it this way for so many years, and it was helpful and it was great. but is it working for you?
Right.
And if it's not working for the person, to get the person to a place of understanding that it's okay to challenge the norm, as long as it's not causing harm to the self, as long as it's not causing harm to anyone else.
Right.
There may be some disagreement on your approach to things and how you want to run your home, but to truly believe and understand that it's okay to challenge that part of the culture that I don't want to be a part of my home.
Right.
To really, so there's some psychoeducation, there's some, instilling, let's say strengthening, their ego strength. Where they're able to be at a place where they can stand on that decision and not crumble or falter because, let's say, that's not a part of the culture.
Right.
But if this is actually helping you, it's okay to challenge that part of the culture. You're not negating your culture. You're not rejecting, who you are.
Right.
You're just adapting something that you feel is better for you and your home. And that's okay.
Right. Makes sense. And then it's also, generational changes. Like just because, like you said, it's always been done past 10, 20, 30 years, it doesn't mean that that particular way of being is now efficient, helpful, it's not, if it's not working, right? So I know myself working with male clients as well, a lot of times the man, especially Hispanic man, it takes a little bit for them to admit maybe, or actually open up about the fact that they feel broken, or they feel like they've been carrying these missing pieces, these scattered pieces that they don't know how to put together. And these scattered pieces keep coming up. They come up in anxiety, depression, maybe sleep problems, eating issues. I mean, so many different ways that your body will also, come out and tell you, hey, I don't think this is right. And I think it's super helpful that as a male therapist, now they have someone they can identify with too. Given your story and what you do for work, it's also kind of, it marries everything together because these male clients who get you as their therapist, they're not just getting a therapist, which is just fine. They're not just getting me, now they're getting a guy. They're getting a dude who knows exactly, similarly what you went through or has been through hardships himself, has then overcome them, and then also can now have the skill, from a professional side to take them into that level of development.
So I would like to say this, and if it's okay, there's a couple little notes here that...
Yeah, definitely. We want you to share.
Yeah. So what I found a lot over the years is, let's say you have males who are accomplished, who overcame, who are in a different place from where their family was, and become successful, all these different things, right? And you would say, let's say from an outsider's perspective, man, the guy has the wife, he has the car, he has the boat, he has all these different things. Man, it's a very successful business person, Yeah. What I find is that many men who come in, to the office, because they have this internal struggle, they still don't feel fulfilled. Yeah. And it's, let's get that next thing. And you would say from an outsider's perspective, right? Oh, why do you even struggle? You have everything that people work real hard for every day as a hope and a dream that for some will not come. Yeah. You have all of that. Yeah. Why do you still struggle? And I think it goes back to not allowing themselves the freedom to express and open up and to discuss. Now, when you look at some statistics here, one of the things that was very interesting, the studies from 2018, so the population was 100,000 from a group of 100,000. Men? Men and women. Okay. Suicide rates by race and gender per 100,000 in 2018. So I don't know what the numbers are today. Right. But this is from a study. It says that black males, suicide rates by race and gender. Black males, 12%. Black females, 2.9%. That's a substantial gap there. Yeah. Hispanic males, 12.1%. And 2.9% in females. So what is that saying as far as suicide rates are concerned? Yeah. Well, so, men are way higher. when they made that decision, they can have everything and still within themselves feel incomplete or not enough or insufficient or whatever the case may be. And for some, you're looking at this rate comparing males and females, it's not good.
Yeah.
You know? What causes that? I mean, those are further studies to explore.
Right, so in addition, culture, society itself too, the way that the male role is looked upon in a general form, you know, you can't break.
So this is a very significant issue. This is a very real issue. It's a very real concern.
Yeah.
That the numbers are so high within the Black and Hispanic male population that was looked into.
It's huge.
And I guess lastly, I'll say this. At least 1 out of every 10, or 10% of men in our country have suffered from trauma as a result of a sexual assault.
Yeah.
I've worked with men who it's taken a few months to get to a place to say, okay, I'm ready to talk about this. About what? Something I never talked to anybody about ever.
Right.
What is that? When I was XYZ years old, I was sexually abused by John or Jane Doe. So you're looking at a man in, you know, let's say, you know, 40s, 50s. They've been carrying that for 40, 30 years.
Yeah.
So when you look at these numbers, this is 1 out of every 10. That's 10.
Huge.
That's 10 out of every 100.
Yeah.
You know.
That could be your friend.
Yeah.
I mean, it's anyone.
And it says, like women, men who experience sexual assault may suffer from depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other emotional problems as a result. It says that boys are more likely than girls to be sexually abused by strangers or by authority figures in organizations such as schools, the church, or athletic programs.
Wow.
So the impact that it could have on, you know, these young boys who now become men could be trust issues, mood instability, substance abuse. Because
and relationship issues. I mean, it shows up in your everyday.
Because they're carrying this trauma. So this is where, let's say, EMDR has been fantastic. You know, where through that style of therapy, you're able to address those issues, those concerns.
Yeah.
And with EMDR, you don't necessarily even have to go into full detail.
Yeah.
It's an amazing therapeutic approach for individuals who struggle with a long history of trauma.
Right.
But these are the things that these groups of men are struggling with. Yet they struggle to reach out and say, I need the support.
Yeah. I think it's amazing to know, and I know you're not the only male therapist out there, but it is a female-driven career as far as, therapy and psychology is concerned. So I want to just say publicly thank you for what you do, because there's a huge population, there's a huge amount of people that have not yet reached out that should, and men specifically have been geared because of society and many different reasons, culture or whatnot, to not seek help. And I too am, passionate about that population, because we're all important. Human beings, we're all important. And in closing, I wanted to ask you, what is your message to the world?
To focus on choosing love over differences. When it comes to differences, there's a difference in opinion, there's a difference in color. You look at hues, one would say it's this color or that color. When you look at, a debate you're having, one's going to have an opinion, and both are going to be equally as passionate as the opposing perspective as to why they are right. But when we choose to focus on love, then I think it's good for the heart. Reduce some anxiety.
Yeah, right?
Some anger management, you may not need it. All jokes aside, I think it's a foundation to meet others, let's say, in a middle ground.
Amazing. Thank you, Pablo, for joining me here today and for sharing that message with our listeners and our viewers. And thank you to everyone who is watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode.